Over the past few years, we have been seeing an increasing number of brain rot decks, and it's getting me worried about the state of the game. Is this a balancing mishap? I mean, for God's sake, look at Prime Evo P.E.K.K.A. Or is this a case of new cards with horrible designs that promote such playstyle? I do think it's a mix of both. Some of the newer cards are straight up unpredictable and very goofy that it makes spamming them an effective strategy. And some of them require very specific answers that they make the game feel very matchup dependent. I might be remembering incorrectly, but I do believe that the brain-rotted playstyle started creeping into the game in January 2024, and that was when Cannoneer was released. Then it became even worse around Duchess, with that tower promoting one of the most toxic Princess Rocket versus Giant Fisherman spam meta. And with the release of Chef, we saw the absolute abomination that traumatized everyone, which is P.E.K.K.A. Goblin Giant. Now, I do think pinning everything on tower troops is unfair, because while Cannoneer made Hyperbait unbearable, it still is broken with Princess Tower. But there is no denying that customizable towers, while cool on paper, are the single worst mechanic ever added to Clash Royale. They make the game way too matchup dependent. Yes, more than it is right now. With cards such as minions, you would be screwed if they have arrows. Would that just make the card unplayable for the whole match? I wouldn't say so, because you could play them when they don't have elixir for arrows to get some value out of them. In other cases where some other cards can get fully nullified by a spell, the option to bait out their poison with a very tempting trade is present, and if they take it, you can just jump in with the punish to get some use out of the card that they hard counter. For tower troops, this situation is entirely different. A Duchess hard counters bait decks. I can't physically outcycle that, she's just sitting there. Towers also don't cost elixir, so she's just sitting there. I could play another game and... oh, she's just sitting there. I'm out. I could leave it at that and call them unhealthy as a concept, but I want to look at all three individually and then give an actual solution to this problem. First of all, Duchess. This tower has the highest initial burst of DPS compared to any other tower troop, but as soon as all the ammo gets used up, it becomes the worst tower in terms of DPS. Even worse than Chef, I think. This makes Duchess very good at two things. The first is clearing out bait cards. As much as I hate bait, I kinda feel bad for them when they face Duchess. Throughout the whole match, they will be getting substantially less chip on your towers. Some of their cards straight up won't even connect when ignored, and some of their cards will also be less threatening when ignored just because you have a certain tower. The normal people bait can somehow deal with it by having Knight tank for their Goblin Barrel. The crazy people bait struggles more with it, which I don't necessarily mind it. Why?
Because fuck them, that's why.
Here is another example. A Skeleton Barrel will never get death damage on tower against a Duchess. Against a heavier deck, that death damage might be your only way to win. Yes, if you want it that bad, you could just tank for it, but essentially that doubles the elixir cost of your push. Evo Barrel straight up just doesn't function properly against a Duchess. The other thing Duchess is cracked at is clearing leftovers. Leftovers to me are remaining troops after a defense. For example, after this drill defense, your bomber is considered a leftover troop, and it will threaten throwing a bomb on the tower if ignored. Now, you might think, isn't this a counter push question mark? I'd argue not really. A counter push to me is a proper push that consists of some cards used on defense and an extra investment that you play with them to help them get more value. Whereas leftovers to me is a word to describe the troops that you decide to not counter push with. The pressure you apply with your leftovers might look small, but I believe time after time it stacks up and leads to a decent advantage. Against Duchess, most of the leftovers are just useless. The extremely fast burst damage will deny so many stuff without the need to respond to them. If you are playing against Duchess, you low-key have to support most, if not all of them. Being put in the position of ignore your half HP wizard and let it die for free, or push with it and give them an easy defense is basically a lose-lose situation. And if countering leftover and bait cards isn't annoying enough, it makes punishing opposite lane very difficult. Like when they play a pump, it's so hard to punish them because that tower is gonna make your push easier to deal with. So what's the solution here? Duchess is weak against pushes that last too long, aka Giant and other beatdown pushes. Realistically, the main solution is on the deck screen, which is why it's very matchup dependent. Unless you learn the trick Lucas is suggesting and pull a Lava Hound out of your ass when you face Dutch chess with a bait deck. Next, let's take a look at Cannoneer. Now, Cannoneer is... oh wait, let me put on my glasses. Now, Cannoneer is the most extreme tower in my opinion. Against any form of tank, or even things like Hog, it honestly feels impossible to scratch their towers. They can straight up just ignore your main tank and only focus on your support, because Cannoneer being there will likely just kill your tank on his own. And then you look at the other side of the spectrum, and a naked graveyard against him is not even a bad play. In fact, most of the times, you'd rather your graveyard tank for your giant than the other way around, which is stupidly funny. Cannoneer also ruins a lot of core interactions like Skeleton Barrel not getting death damage. Wall Breakers when split will have 0 connections instead of pressuring both lanes. Now it's kinda fine cause when they are played together, they would both still connect. It has to do with them being played towards the middle, so if you played them that way, you would lose one connection. Furnace loses all of its purpose because you don't need to respond to the fire spirits, so a big part of his kit gets removed. The high damage on his first hit makes countering a Goblin Barrel with 0 damage much easier. Literally any swarm card that can cover 2 goblins will do the trick. Plenty of other interactions get screwed up with Cannoneer, something like Battle Ram would just get fully countered with 2 elixir, which feels unfair. Besides the interaction, Cannoneer is also great at clearing up leftovers. Granted, it's not as good as Dutch chess when you leave it on its own, but with a small amount of support, the things you can do, especially against leftovers on 2 separate lanes, is just very mind-blowing. The hyperbait style I think originally became possible because of how strong the Cannoneer's defense was. Yes, it still works with Princess Tower, but the Prime Cannoneer version was nearly impossible to stop. Now on to Chef. In theory, this one shouldn't be an issue because it's just a weaker Princess Tower, so no defensive interactions change. But what it really does is change troop interactions in a messed up way. Like, yes, your tower is weaker, but your queen survives lightning now. Awesome, well played. Like, take this game for example. I go Sparky in the back, he goes Rocket. Sparky survives, then kills his guards, which already is an amazing amount of value for an equal trade, but I realized he still needs to deal with the Sparky, so I went all in. He had to log the Sparky, which prevented him from supporting his prince, so it was just tower for me, which honestly is just stupid brain dead. There are other times where it ruins some niche interactions you wouldn't think of. Here, my witch survived 3 Vulk hits, and me knowing a +1 witch survives that is why I went all in and won the game. Here is yet another example of Nado not killing skeletons cause the witch is level 16, also won me the whole game, but to be honest, it's Nado, so I don't feel bad about this one. Some cards like Goblin Machine are just inherently stupid when over-leveled, and you can clearly notice how it just doesn't feel fair to play against that. These +1 level interactions can be tolerable in triple elixir when there is more elixir on the field, which makes them more manageable. But in single elixir, a +1 P.E.K.K.A. is just way too much for some decks to handle, and the Chef was one of the main reasons P.E.K.K.A. Goblin Giant became a thing. Fisherman is also another huge offender, but that's a very different story. Phoenix Egg at level 17 is a whole different conversation. The amount of times I lost just because I had to respond to that egg is really stupid. So how do you deal with that? I have John Hyperslop here to teach you.
Click a card. Click the opponent's tower. 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 Wait, I'm sorry, click the ability.
Spamming their tower will force their pancake on an awkward defending troop. Basically, you want to be as annoying as humanly possible, but not too annoying that they decide to ignore it and go all in for the 3 crown race. You aren't beating a Chef player at that. Chef just creates this boring game of cat and mouse where one player is only defending and one player is always attacking, and both players are trying to be the one that's constantly attacking. Now that I explained the issues with tower troops as a concept and individually, let's get onto the solution. Here's my hot take. Tower troops should be a 2v2 exclusive feature. Now you might be wondering what the hell is bro talking about, cause 2v2 is an irrelevant casual game mode. 2v2 ladder was a thing before, and I think with tower troops being a 2v2 exclusive feature, we can make it permanent. Historically, Clash Royale struggled with balancing 2v2 and 1v1s because they used the same card pool. Giant Skeleton is kinda mid in 1v1s and doesn't provide that much value compared to what you can do with 6 Elixir. But in 2v2, that thing is straight up busted because there are more troops on the arena, so the Death Bomb gets an immense amount of value. In Merge Tactics, the game has Rulers, which is a special card specifically unique to that game mode, and every season they add a new ruler into the trophy road of that game mode. And there is a competitive leaderboard for it. It's like a whole new game. If 2v2 ladder became permanent with your tower troops as the main gimmick, this would solve the balancing issue between both modes. When Giant Skeleton is too strong, you buff Cannoneer to indirectly nerf it, keeping its regular strength in 1v1 while making it weaker in 2v2. And if Bait is too weak, instead of buffing it, God forbid, and ruining 1v1, you could nerf Duchess and indirectly buff it, and so on. The cool thing is that they can add a new tower troop every month with different gimmicks to help certain archetypes. The indirect balancing is the solution to justify making 2v2 a serious, competitive, permanent game mode. Besides, since tower troops can be different on the board, i.e. Duchess on one side and Cannoneer on the other, this solves the matchup thing because if you are running a beatdown deck, you can focus on pushing the Duchess side. And if you are running some graveyard or swarm deck, you can coordinate with your teammate to push towards the Cannoneer side. Now, there is a small chance that you would run into 2 Cannoneer players and you are playing a beatdown deck, but even then, it's not that much of a problem because with 2 players and 2 elixir bars, it's much easier to break through. Gimmicks like Chef Level Up and other things they can introduce are also easier to deal with when there are 2 players and 2 elixir bars teaming up to counter it. Tower troops can also solve the spell cycling issue because a lot of 2v2 game modes come down to spamming spells, since 2 players spamming poisons is very effective. If we ban Princess Tower completely from 2v2 game mode and make tower troops immune to spells, it can be a direct way of combating the issue without confusing casual players, because any tower troops other than Princess are immune to spells. That's easy to understand. In conclusion, I think this is an amazing opportunity at fixing the tower troops mistake and using it as a solution to how 2v2 can't have unique card stats. Having constant new 2v2 towers with a permanent 2v2 ladder sounds really fun, at least on paper, and I hope if any of the devs is watching to consider this. What do you think about this idea? Like, I want honest thoughts. Would you love playing it, or would you not care about it, my dudes?